working moms.
Hey, working dads.
Hey, aspiring working parents.
And allies of working parents.
Are you in search of your pillow?
Does it take you 24 hours just to get out the door in the morning?
Are you the family ATM?
Or the family Uber driver?
Are you on a Zoom call for work while carpooling while also watching a practice?
If so, welcome to our world, the Parents at Work podcast.
I'm Lori.
I'm Jason.
We are married.
And we have two wild and crazy redheaded boys.
We're here to shine a light on the roller coaster ride that is working parenthood. I'm a healthcare lawyer and founder of a working parent community called Mindful Return.
And I'm an executive coach with Ready, Set, Launch, LLC. I wrote a cool book called Relationships to Infinity.
And I wrote a cool book called Back to Work After Baby. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Parents at Work podcast. We're so excited that you're here. And somewhat ironically, we are following up our last episode, which was all about grown-up sleep, with a conversation with this amazing working parent mom and dad team who run a mattress company. They're entrepreneurs.
Amazing.
And we were just chatting right before the podcast started. Martin, will you please, before we forget about it, give us the line that you just said that I believe is an amazing mantra about bedtime and morning time?
A consistent sleep time is far more important than a consistent wake time. So set a sleep alarm.
Sleep alarm, yes. And then we were talking about magnesium with Lisa. So anyway, we're so excited to welcome Lisa Tan and Martin Rawls-Meehan to the podcast today. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Lisa, then Jason's going to tell you about Martin, and then we are going to dig into our conversation with working parents who work with each other. Lisa Tan is the Chief Marketing and Strategy Officer at Reverie, where she's focused on creating a customer experience that makes shopping for beds a positive experience and gets people excited about better sleep. Lisa's favorite part of her role is tackling the multifaceted, multi-departmental problems that require collaboration from all brains on deck. It sounds like what happens in parenthood often, too. Mm-hmm. Lisa's a proud alum of Princeton and Northwestern Kellogg, a passionate board member for nonprofits Care House of Oakland County and Beyond Bedtime, and finds fascination every day in her tween girls. Over to you, Jason, to introduce Martin.
A pleasure. Martin Rawls-Meehan is the co-founder and CEO of Reverie, a sleep technology company focused on elevating the quality of people's lives through its adjustable base and mattress technology. A creator by nature, Martin holds over 100 patents. I'll say it again, 100 patents in the adjustable bed and mattress space. Martin's a student of life with an undergraduate degree from Princeton, master's from London School of Economics, and a JD from New York University, and devotes much of his free time to helping kids, including his two daughters, be the best version of themselves as a trustee of Detroit County Day School and a track coach for the Michigan Mustangs. Go Mustangs! I was also a track coach for our elementary school, and we were also the Mustangs.
The merch Mustangs,
So,
yeah.
We were the merch Mustangs.
Go
Yes.
Mustangs.
So go Mustangs.
Yeah.
I love it.
You make me sound very busy, Jason, and far more impressive than I am. So I think
I hate the word busy. We live full lives, Martin. I don't use the word busy anymore.
Yes.
It feels like a badge
I like
that I
that.
hate.
That's-
So
yeah.
full
to the gills.
Full to the gills, yeah.
You
So
know, and being a parent at work, it's already full. So, you know,
Yes.
there's plenty. There's
Yes,
absolutely
very
plenty.
true.
well, I'm very excited
Yep,
to be
yep.
here on this double date podcast episode. And as we start every conversation with working parents, we would love for each of you in turn to, however you want to, tell us your own personal working parent story. Lisa, do you want to kick us off?
Sure, I'll kick us off. I would say the story of Martin and I as parents is that we are constantly tapping in and out. So going back to the track analogy, it's like we're running a relay and we're constantly handing off the baton in some shape or form. And that, that's from the morning routine to drop-offs to pickups to all the activities to scheduling, all the things that parents do. And I think we've gotten into a rhythm at this point, which is pretty consistent for any given season until everything gets shaken up again. But it's very much about tapping in and tapping out and trying to balance balance the overall load. I don't like the word balance per se, but I think when we're talking about load bearing, as parents do, there is the
I
dance
don't
that
think
we
we
do
have balance. I wish
to make sure that we balance.
it's an aspirational term for us. I
Yeah.
don't know. It's tough.
Yeah. How old are your girls now, Lisa?
So as of last week, 10 and 12.
10 and 12. Okay. Yeah. Squarely
Yeah.
in that tween phase.
Most definitely.
I'm thinking to the idea that is still embedded in a lot of parental leave policies around primary caregiver. And what you're describing just goes to show that that concept of primary caregiver is so antiquated for many, many,
Yes.
many families. And kudos to all the companies who strike it from their parental leave policies. Martin.
I've got a funny story about
Mhm.
that. Like we can come back to it
No,
later,
do
not
it.
now.
Tell
But
us.
No, go for it.
it's not a primary caregiver corporate story, but when our oldest daughter was, Lisa, how old was she? 6 months old?
You're telling a different story. I
I'm
thought you were going to tell her about when you took her along on your business trip.
Well, no, I was gonna
Ooh.
say that too, but
She was 3.
that's a funny story for later. But no, I was just gonna talk about. So anyhow, our oldest daughter was 6 months old, and she wasn't crawling. So of course, I'm like, oh my gosh, like what's going on? So I started to read up on early childhood education, this thing called the Doman method. Long story short, I signed up for this week-long intensive course in Philadelphia at the Institute for the Advancement of Human Potential, I think it was called. I can tell you all about it. It's this intensive course, and they teach you the Doman method. What the part of the story that I think is interesting is it's all moms. And the entire course, all the vocabulary, everything they talk about is moms, 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 moms teaching the kid. And I'm like, well, at one point I raised my hand. I'm like, could you just say dad once throughout the entire, because I get it, but I'm here and I'm going to be doing this. I get it. I'm not a mom technically, but there are a lot of dads who will probably be engaged in this. So there is this antiquated vernacular around all types of things associated with childcare that typically not just there's primary, but it's typically the mother, right? As opposed to a team oriented philosophy. And that was just, even in that environment, which I would consider extremely progressive and thoughtful, all the rest of it, like they couldn't do it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think we come across examples like that every day, whether it's the parent team chat that only includes moms, or getting a call from school. Who do they call first? It's always mom. And for us, no, they call me. I don't answer. They call Martin, right?
Exactly.
And it could easily be vice versa. And those are the things that I think we see a lot of our friend group both parents are equally active, and it's necessary when you're working and you're trying to enable the full growth of your kids, experiencing all these fun opportunities that they have as children.
Yeah. And what's the you brought your daughter on the work trip story? Was this like without another parent?
This is a good one.
So before our kids were at they went to Montessori up until age 4, right? At least.
Yeah.
So anyhow, we had we could pull them out of school for significant periods of time. And when our oldest daughter was 4, we had been taking our kids to Taiwan over the summer and putting them in classes, et cetera. So they would, really reinforce the language, the Chinese language. That I think I mentioned this on the last call. Both of our kids, I only speak Chinese to them at home. That's gotten more relaxed, but from birth, that was the rule, so that they would be bilingual.
Wow.
So at age 4, I had to go over to Taiwan on a business trip. Oh, Aria's was 2017, something like that, right? So
I think she was 3, because I feel like Phoenix was
3 or
just
4.
born.
It was one or
Yeah.
something around that age. And I had to go to Taiwan on a business trip. And I said to Lisa, I was like, why don't I just bring Aria? She can come with me on factory visits. I'll, find her a tutor during the day when I'm, there was an office I would go into and I would work at with one of our, company we collaborated with over there. So they gave me some space. and I hired a tutor to come in and be with Arya during the day, our oldest. And then when I had a trip, if I was going to visit the factory or supplier meetings, I would just bring her along, and she would sit next to me in the middle of the negotiations. Like we're trying to pick product, and I'm like, what do you think? And so a couple things. One, I mean, it was really challenging because her jet lag was rough. Um, I remember the first day, like she got up at like 1 and was like, Daddy, she's ready to go. And I'm like, oh no. So I got her a lot of toys that she could just play with. Like, it got better and better. She'd wake up an hour later every day. And then we're ready to go home. Right. So, but during the day when she wasn't struggling with jet lag, she was sitting in these meetings, and I thought, number one, her Chinese got a lot better. She really enjoyed the trip, but my suppliers got a kick out of it. They thought it was hilarious that, I had my daughter next to me, we're talking about, pricing negotiations and all this stuff. And she's kind of sitting in there and every now and again, just, putting her 2 cents in. And I think it was a really cool trip because I realized that I could include my kids in what we were doing in an interesting way. And she really enjoyed it too, which I thought was, I wasn't sure I was going to go, and it ended up being a great trip.
Amazing.
I love it. I love it.
I am not.
Bring them along. Give them adventure.
Yeah. I am not going to ask you the boring question of tell us about your working parent story, because you've already demonstrated some significant anecdotes there. I also really quickly, before I pass the baton to Jason, wanted to put a quick plug in for Masha Rumer Simon's wonderful book called Parenting with an Accent. It's all about raising kids with that bilingual culture and grappling with all of the challenges that come with wanting them to learn a second language in a country that's not necessarily speaking it. So she, I feel like I've interviewed her before, not on the podcast, but for a book talk, and her book is fantastic.
And just so
out.
you know, we did 3. They went to a Spanish preschool. We did, so they were all Spanish from like 2 to 4. We did Chinese at home, and we reinforced that with Chinese school on weekends, and then they got English. So I'm pretty convinced that their best language is probably Chinese at about age 2 or 3. Spanish might have been number 2. English might have been number 3. Now, they've forgotten a lot of that because we put them in the regular system, and then they lose a lot of their Spanish. But, they still have that foundation, which I think is important.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
Over to you, Jason.
I love it. I love it. This is fascinating. So, and I think what makes both of you extremely interesting is that you're working with your partner on a daily basis. Lisa, how do you make that work? What do you think makes that work? What's challenging about it? And how do you make it so that everybody works together and you're raising kids?
So I think there are many layers there. One, Martin and I hardly see each other during the workday. We are like ships passing in the night in the office sometimes, because we don't sit side by side. We have different areas of responsibility, and so for most days we don't spend a lot of time together at work or at home. Because, there's always something going on. And I think the underlying mechanism that makes that work is trust. Because we know we're confident in each other's abilities and in what we're accomplishing as our primary goals, but we don't have to be checking in with each other all the time, because quite frankly, we don't have the time to check in with each other all the time. So it really allows us to expand and grow and be comfortable in our spaces and in our organization, because we have the flexibility to not communicate all the time. That said, I love our power hours when we sit down and go over our long list of things and brainstorm and really have quality time, whether that's work related or personal. But it goes back to quality, not quantity. And it's funny, I think a lot of people over the years have thought that because we're married, we share a brain. And so that's one of the biggest challenges, is overcoming the idea that I have any idea what's going on in Martin's day just because I'm married to him. And once you get past that with your colleagues, then everything's fine. We are still individuals. We have individual ways of going about things and thinking. I mean, we are very different in our approaches to most things. Although I would say it's sort of we are always aligned or mostly aligned, but we may have different ways of going about things.
Yeah.
So those are the pros and cons. And then from a plus side, being able to raise a family while working together allows a lot of flexibility. So the ability to travel together and still work and bring our kids along. The ability to have the flexibility during the day. And I know you've talked about the split, the split shifts.
Yeah.
I mean, the split shift has changed over time. Now I would say it's picking up the kids, taking them to their activities, and then working while waiting. So it's a different kind of split shift, but we have that flexibility, and we can, again, balance each other's schedules and needs. And that's really helpful. And I live out of our calendar. I'm constantly in my calendar, the family calendar, everything. And it's helpful to just be able to have full visibility into what we are doing so that we can live that flexible life.
And to be clear on the details, you two founded this company together years ago, right? No. Okay.
No, I joined. Martin founded the company with his co-founder. I joined shortly after we got married. And I said, I will do a consulting project for you and help set up your marketing department and your direct-to-consumer division. And it'll be 3 to 6 months, and we'll see how it goes. And then I stuck around. I
don't think
overstayed.
we're actually married yet. I don't think we're married yet. We were engaged, but we weren't married yet.
We did a lot of things to poke and prod before we got married. But again, I guess that's a testament to our trust and our relationship.
We do have other things that we've started together,
Yes.
but Reverie, the sort of we'll call it our core business, was founded by me and a friend of mine from high school.
Fascinating. And so Martin, what would you say is, so Lisa was talking about, Lisa has her way of doing things, you have your way. Describe those vantage points. What is that approach like?
How much time do we have? Right? No, I would say
we've got time.
In truth, I think we're closer. We're closer than you would think. Like on an absolute scale perspective, we're closer than you would think in terms of how we operate. But it's different enough that we certainly, like, she and I would say we're quite different. And I think that's fair. The best way I can describe it would be how leadership team meetings operate. And recently, Lisa's been leading them, and I think she does a better job of leading them than I do. And that's one of the reasons why I think she does it and should do it. She's a better, again, if you're familiar with EOS or these types of, call them entrepreneurs operating system, or, these business operating systems. She's, in my opinion, she's a better implementer and organizer than I am, no question. I tend to go off on tangents. I tend to chase shiny toys. I want to innovate. I want to always break the mold. I'm like, let's go break it and see what happens. Like, that's my approach. It's not that I can't organize. It's just, that's not my default. Whereas she tends to be much more organized, has a more, I think, thoughtful and structured approach to problem solving. It's not that she can't be creative. It's not that she can't do these things. It's just, that's not, her default is not to just go break something and see what happens. Whereas that's probably more my, like, let's go figure it out. There's got to be a better way to do it. Right. And so when you lead a leadership team meeting, you need structure, you need organization. It's not that I can't do it. It's just that she's a lot better at it than I am. So she does it. And I think we both kind of recognize that, and we let one another work where we're stronger, and we just tend to not have conflict because we appreciate that about each other.
Sure. And we've
go ahead.
come to appreciate that more over time. I think we are that balance and counterbalance in that example. And over time, I think that's become a stronger identity for each of us. And things get done better when Martin is acting as a visionary and not as an integrator.
Lisa, how often are you having those conversations with Martin on, well, what is it that you actually like to do, and what are you actually good at, and how are those conversations taking place?
I mean, I would say another key element of our working relationship is that, as entrepreneurs, things are always changing, right? The one constant is change. And we are both even though we both have different working styles, we both appreciate the need for openness and understanding that we may need to pivot. We may need to change. There may be something that comes down the pipeline in 2 days or 2 years that is completely unexpected, and we will figure it out.
Yeah.
So I think that's a lot of what that is really, really important. If one of us was more set on it must be this way, and I cannot deal with the change, I cannot deal with the lack of structure, that would be a problem.
Yeah, and I think it's less like the conversations are less like, what are you good at? What am I good at? And more like, okay, what do we need to get done? Okay, who's going to do what? Like we just default to it, and we understand that, we're both going to have some slightly different strengths. And then every now and again, we have to do stuff that we don't want to do. Like we get that, right? But I think the conversations are easier because we don't, like if we were both identical in terms of our strengths and our weaknesses and what we like to do, it would be a little more problematic. We'd probably be fighting over the things we want to do. It just
Agreed.
doesn't really happen that much because we probably, it's like the things where neither one of us is strong, but somebody's got to do it. Those become the more problematic ones.
You know what? And what
I'm thinking about washing dishes.
No, you do it.
Like,
you do it.
Nobody wants to wash the dishes.
I'm not good at that one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. It's a great example.
That
Lauren.
is a great example.
What I love about what both of you are talking about is there's this openness, there's this flexibility. Lisa, you were talking about trust. Martin, for you, how did and how would you define that trust in what initially was a relationship where you dating and got married, and now you're working together? How would you define trust in that evolution?
It's interesting. I mean, I guess I've never really had to think. It's just been there, right? Lisa and I have known each other since we were, 17, 18 years old. We know each other really well. It's never really been something I've had to think about. It's just been there. I think like Lisa, we've just kind of figured it out. We work through issues, but there's not thankfully, like it's just not something I have to think about, right? I don't worry about whether there's a trust issue there. It just, that's good. That's done. And you just have to figure out how to get stuff done and whether work ends up taking over everything because you don't that's the challenge, but it's never been a trust issue, in that sense. And I think we both are, we're both pretty honest about when we can't get something done. So it's always, we know we're going to do our best. We know we're going to try. Sometimes we fail and that's okay. But I know it's not because of lack of effort or whatever it might be.
It's a real openness in your communication with each other. That's wonderful. That's wonderful.
We try. I mean, again, I don't know. I feel like we're always trying to do better, but
Yes.
certain things, I guess maybe I just take the trust for granted. I don't want to make it sound like that, but it's just not something I worry about.
No, it is a given. I would say we never talk about trust issues. We do fight about the dishes.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense.
That makes
You're
sense.
also.
She doesn't trust that I'm not good at doing the dishes. Oh, no, right?
Oh wow, this could really devolve right now. This is
A race to the bottom on who can trust to do the.
Yeah.
Lori has her way of doing it. All right, we can talk about dishes later. All right. Lori, next question.
I led a retreat of Mindful Return alumni last weekend, and we had a whole conversation about the tension around dishes in the household. And
you want to tell the story?
Different styles. And no, I don't actually.
The point is, we are not alone.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
Everybody's got that issue,
and
right?
As you were both talking, I was thinking about Marie Forleo's quote, everything is figure outable. Like that seems to be a core belief that you both have. Like everything is we will figure out whatever the next thing is, whenever the world pivots on us. Okay, so I want to take you back to the early years of your girls' existence. I'm presuming, based on the timeline that you described, that you were entrepreneurs when your kids arrived. And how did you navigate parental leave, the transition, who was taking what time when, during those early years, given that you were, self-employed, working for your own company?
So fortunately, Martin had founded the company far enough before we had our first kid that we were in a pretty good place when our first child was born. And actually part of that was creating a parental leave policy.
Mm.
We had a lot of people, we were hiring a lot at that point, and we were hiring a lot of 20 somethings. So we were setting and then we had people that were already, had already had children. So we really were able to carve out what that parental leave policy would look like within the constraints that we had. So I was able to take time with both daughters. I would say my first maternity leave was longer. We had a nice nursing room and everything in our or pumping room in our office. But I was able to take 3 solid months, pushing into 4. I took her to a trade show, not 4. And then
we took her, right? Yeah, that was
we took her. We've taken them on many trips. Some have gone better than others.
Had our passport stolen and
Oh dear.
Oh,
That's a story for another time. And then with our second daughter, honestly, things were so busy that I didn't even tell the team I was pregnant until I was like in month 5. I mean, that it flew by so quickly because we were so busy at home, we were so busy at work, and it just like whoosh. So I feel like I didn't get as far removed from day to day with our second kid just because where things were and also by choice. But I think and Martin never really took any paternity leave. But I would say that we were able to set an example for all of the up and coming parents in our office to show that you can make it work. We've always valued flexibility and time. You get your job done, you work around it. We're not going to make you sit button seat until 6 p.m. if you need to go pick up your kid. And I think that's always been a really important part of our culture, is that things don't change just because you no longer have parental leave. Like, you still have your children and you're still having to figure it all out. So, I mean, that would be probably the biggest takeaway of those early years is understanding that it's time is very valuable, and it is so important to have time to bond with your child, but it may not necessarily play out in true time off and then coming back to work as if everything is going back to as it was before.
Yeah. Martin, what would you add to this conversation? And can you tell us anything about sort of the company's impetus to put in place that parental leave policy? I know a lot of smaller companies struggle with the idea that they need one and then they ignore it and then it just doesn't go away. And, what motivated the decision to put it in place?
I think we've always been pretty, I think we've always been pretty liberal. And we've as we've grown, we had to create new policies, right? So like when you're a small company, you just, fly by the seat of your pants. It's not a thing. And then as you grow, it's like, oh man, we got to do this. So as we realized we needed to do those things, we've done them. Lisa led the charge on that, around 2012, 2013, as we were really, growing quite a bit as an organization. And I would just say we've been pretty, open, pretty liberal as far as allowing not just parental leave, but just vacation in general. Like we want people to take time. We want people to be refreshed, re-energized. And then within that context, obviously, like, taking the time to be with your child, taking that leave is important. So we've had, parental leave for both men and women. It's not just the mother, the father. I was not able to take leave. If Lisa's taking leave, we can't both not be there. So it just wasn't really an option for me. It would have been great. But it was definitely more important for her to have as much time as she wanted. And, look, the reality is this, like I don't want to say flexible because you're working 24/7, but at the same time, I was still dropping the kids off at school. I was still spending time at home. Like I can create opportunities to be with the kid, be with my kids. So that was, while it was, would I have liked to have had some? Yes, I just didn't have the opportunity to do it. But we have had a lot of people in our organization take advantage of it. And I think they come back healthier, happier, better people, better colleagues as a result.
Absolutely.
It's great.
Awesome. Over to you, Jason.
Okay, so clearly you have done much in your careers. I'm always interested in, and I've never been a fan of like what was your major in college to get you where you are. I think it's a false association. I'm much more interested in, so what was your first job like in high school? What was the first thing you did that, where you had to put yourself out there? So Lisa, start us. What was your first
Okay.
job and what'd you learn from it?
So my very first job, I was actually 9, and our neighbors across the street asked if I could babysit their 6-year-old granddaughter.
9.
Well, that didn't go so well. I think I was about an hour in, and she made me cry. But I learned from that, right? Like I fail fast, so learn your limits. And then I didn't babysit again for a while, but I did do a lot of babysitting in high school. I also worked for our town newspaper. So I grew up in New Mexico in a small town, Los Alamos. There are about 17,000 people. So I was an intern at the local newspaper. And because it was a small town and because the editor I was working for had to take a vacation, I got to cover the rodeo one year. So that was a highlight, right? Like sometimes you're in the right place at the right time and you get to step in and step up your responsibility. So that was fun. I didn't know anything about rodeo, but I did love to write and I was really interested in journalism. So I seized the day.
It sounds like the origin story of being comfortable and just being able to figure it out was the rodeo and covering it. And
the rodeo and
it's the rodeo. I love it.
Babysitting when you're still a baby.
Yeah.
I was like, is
exactly.
it even legal to leave the 9-year-old alone, let alone with another? Anyway, a different time.
I wasn't
It was
alone.
the
'Cause,
80s.
yeah,
The
it was the
80s,
80s.
whatever.
Yeah.
Anything goes.
So you're early on getting out of your comfort zone. I love it. What about you, Martin?
Okay, so babysitting, sort of dog sitting type of stuff aside, I'd say my first real job where I had to fill out, what would I have filled out? A W-2. I would have had to put my social security number down. I was getting a real paycheck. Was my sophomore year in high school. I was a tennis professional at the local racket club. So I did that for a couple summers. I was a pretty good junior tennis player, and so the local racket club would pick up some of their top juniors to help with their summer programs. I had to pay. So ironically, my business partner now and his family, those kids, my parents were their guardians in high school. They wanted me to go back to Taiwan with them sophomore year summer for a trip. They went back for like a month. And my parents said, okay, but you got to pay for it. So I had to work for like a couple months to earn the money to pay for that trip. So I picked up that tennis job as a part of it. I did it for a couple summers. And I learned that you can make a lot of money if you have a good skill. Cause we're like, I don't remember what I was, probably like $20 an hour back in like the early 90s. I mean, I was pretty good.
That's a lot of money.
As a cooler. So that was great. And then I sold knives for Cutco Cutlery. I don't know if anybody knew that Cutco guy, right? Senior year in high school. And then I also did freshman year in college. I had to pay, I was a financial aid kid, so I had to earn a good chunk of my tuition. So that was my, my other gig.
How creative and entrepreneurial. Selling Cutco knives, teaching tennis.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd say creative and entrepreneurial. I got the all-night senior party. Cutco was smart. They put these like little flyers underneath your windshield wiper saying earn. I think it was like $12.50 an hour. And I was like, well, it's less than tennis, but it's not bad. So let me see. I call them. And of course, you make way more than that on commissions if you can sell. But so I learned how to cold call, how to sell, how to build that, that type of book of business. And it was pretty good. But also, wasn't going to last very long for me, but it was good for a couple summers. It was great.
Nice. One of our former daycare teachers and COVID era babysitters also sold Cutco knives. And so we have, for example,
yes,
a pizza roller that is a result of her Cutco sales.
She made a good hourly rate from you. You only have a pizza roller?
We also had a cutting board. Oh, we had a bread knife or something. Yeah.
No, there were we didn't get the full set, but there were like specific types of knives that we needed, and so we wanted
Did
to
she cut the
support her.
penny for you? Did she do the
No.
cutting of
Oh,
the
we
penny?
missed out,
Oh,
Jason.
there you go. That's why you didn't get the
Talking about
set. You
all
didn't
the
get the
sales tactics.
full sales pitch, man.
Wow.
Oh my goodness.
She spared us the full sales pitch, I think.
Principal sales pitch.
Yes.
Yeah, just
No, but we'll pull out the Cutco pizza roller every once in a while, and so
Yeah.
I love it.
Try it on a penny.
Okay. Good to know.
All right.
That I think
And,
our
there's
youngest.
the scissors cut the penny, not the pizza roller. Just to be clear, you're not putting a pizza roller through it.
Okay.
Try it. That'd be pretty impressive if you can do that, Jason.
I've got some homework this weekend. I'm excited.
Yeah.
I'm excited. On to you, Lori. Next question.
So let's pivot from the skills you learned in your early jobs to the skills that you believe that you've gained through parenthood that are also useful to your professional roles and to your career. I think we don't talk enough about how much parents grow and learn through their parenthood, and I just want to elevate that conversation. So would love to hear your thoughts on that. Lisa, you want to go first?
Sure. Well, definitely negotiating. That begins like as like the first few months. I feel like those kids are. It's amazing the innate like push and pull that immediately happens with a small child. So definitely negotiating, but I would say even more so prioritizing. There's never like figuring out how to have that quality time and be present with your kids is so difficult. And I think the COVID and post-COVID era have made it even more difficult when we work partially from home and, there is more flexibility in how we operate our days, which also means that sometimes there's always or frequently noise in the background.
Yes.
And like even today, the kids don't have school today. So how do you balance that? It's hard. I don't like balance, but it's hard to find other words. But prioritizing is really is something that we've become very good at. I always have a long checklist of things that I keep every day. I circle the ones that I'm gonna tackle, but as other things come up, you just figure out how to prioritize. And I think because there's limited time in every day to focus on those three things that must get done for work. And there are immediate, urgent things that you need to do for your kids. Figuring out that list is very important. And I've definitely gotten much better at that than I was in my early days, pre-kids, when I probably, looking back on it, spent a lot of time on things that I didn't need to spend time on.
Yeah, the list gets so much more carefully curated. I think we lived in a world where somehow we thought that everything on the list like needed to get done in a day, and now that's just a sheer fantasy. Martin, how about you? What skill or skills do you think parenthood has brought out in you?
So I agree with Lisa, prioritizing for sure. I also have gotten much better at losing negotiations. That's a skill that I've developed with my kids. I'm not sure that helps in business, but it's definitely something that I've learned how to do gracefully. I would just mentorship, especially as they've gotten older and as I've also coached them, thinking about how to help kids reach their potential. I think has helped, particularly some of my younger team members. You know, it can be a little bit challenging at times, especially as I've gotten older and I have more experience and I have certain expectations, like being patient and creating a process and thinking about it, and just slower phases of development. I think has been helpful.
Yeah. Learning to reflect and think through what that person needs that's specific to them. Absolutely. And Martin, I wanted to stick with you for a moment because you mentioned in sort of an offhand comment earlier, well, Reverie is like our main thing, but we have some other side stuff that we do together. One of those side things I happen to know is a podcast that you started. And I just want you to share a little bit more about that passion project / other thing that you are working on together.
Yeah, we work on other businesses together that we've started, it typically springs out of a need that, at least in my case, like, I'll have a friend or somebody I know who wants to do something or is looking for something, and I'll help support that. And all of a sudden we have a little business, right? In this case, with the podcast, it was really Lisa's brainchild. She drove that. I certainly have helped, and I've tried to be, a supporting cast member and a co-pilot when she wants one. But I think she really drove the thinking behind that. And she's been talking about writing a book, on working like a lot of different things over the last couple of years. And I think ultimately she'll tell the story better than I can.
Awesome.
But came from her.
Awesome. Over to you then, Lisa. Let's hear the podcast story.
No, I think that's right. I think in the early years I was wondering if working together was going to work out, but clearly after that 3-month and then 6-month mark and then years, it has. And we were really we were really siloed, I would say, in the early years, because we're focusing on the business, we're starting and raising a family, and there wasn't a lot of time to go out and explore resources or network with others doing similar things. So it's always been in the back of my mind, like, well, how do others do it? What are the things that make a working relationship work? And originally I thought it'd be fun to do a book or a research project. I would love to geek out on like a deep research project, but ultimately it all kind of boils back to talking to hundreds of people about their experience and seeing what rises to the top as far as consistencies. So it felt like a good time to start it this year.
Yeah. And tell us the name of the
And
podcast.
For Better or Work.
Har, har, har. I love that.
Dun-dun-dun.
So we're working on it, and there are a lot of kinks to figure out. I think right now I'm very much in the phase of I need to edit it just a little bit more and just a little bit more. So that's the biggest hurdle to push over, and that's where Martin comes in and says, just get it out in the world.
Like, hey, it's done. Let's go. Let's see what happens, right?
Exactly.
It's a worst. If it's horrible, fine. We'll fix it next time. It's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, but beyond just learning ourselves, I think it's building community, and these conversations and double dates are so much fun, and they're just very enriching to everything we do.
Well, Jason and I are we're feeling very lucky to be part of that community of couples
Yay.
who work together.
Hey.
Yes. Thank you for that.
Yes.
Over to you, Jason, as we wrap up here today.
Yes. Final question. I want to start with Martin, because you were talking about how parenthood was also allowing you to be a better mentor. What would Martin say to Martin with 2020 hindsight? What piece of advice would you give to yourself when you became a new parent?
Yeah, great. I did lots of pieces of advice I'd probably give myself, man, gosh. But no, truly, if I had to synthesize it down, I think it would just be patience. Just thinking back to why I went to that week-long program in Philadelphia, right? I was worried about these things that are actually totally normal. And on the one hand, I'm glad I did it, right? So that lack of patience drove me to do some pretty cool things. But at the same time, I think having patience and applying it better than I did, right, would have helped me be a better parent than I was, and certainly would have de-stressed things a little bit. I'm sure we all look back and we think, wow, I could have done this differently or that differently. And I don't feel like I have regrets, but if I could give myself advice, that would be it. And it's hard because I think a little bit of the impatience is what drives me as an entrepreneur and drives me to try some of these new things. But I do think that applying patience, particularly with, the development and growth of our kids, early on would have been a good piece of advice that I don't know if I would have taken it, but I would have given it to myself.
And at the very least, you've recognized it now. And I love how you put the modifier in front of patience, applying patience. So it's an active, and it's in your mindset. How can I apply patience? So I think that's great advice to a younger Martin. So, Lisa, what's your perspective?
For me, it goes back to what really matters. So younger me was very wound up about hitting certain deadlines and milestones, and you realize that the things that really matter are the moments in time that happen, that the rapport building with your friends, with your child, the magic that comes out of seeing them experience something new for the first time. And those things should take precedent over the structure and the planning. And I've really learned to embrace that and to be comfortable living in that space where this is not going as expected. This is maybe not even going great for the kid, but it's a moment of learning and wonder that this human being is coming into herself.
Beautiful.
Can I I have a little vignette
Please.
if I don't know if
Go
we have
for it.
time. So just thinking back on on an event from like a week ago that I think applies to what at least I was talking about, and also what Lisa's talking about, kind of encapsulates both, I believe. So took a group of for our track club, took a group of 11 middle schoolers. We had a high school group, but I focus on the middle school group mostly, to Nike Nationals indoors in New York City. So these are kids who qualified. The qualifying times are ridiculous. Like they're super fast. They're training hard all winter. They've worked for this. So, their parents fly into New York City. Some of them have other family members that fly in. It's this big deal. And the middle school races are primarily compressed into one day. So you fly in on Wednesday, and then on Thursday, you've got to compete. And it's a long day. It's intense. And one of the things I try to tell all the parents is like, hey, this is a great meet. It's a lot of fun. I also don't really care how fast they run or, how they do. That's not why we're here. These are middle schoolers. We're here because this is an important event in their development as people and as athletes, and learning to come and to run and to deal with this and to be a part of this experience with your teammates and work through the pressure yourself, et cetera. That's important. And it might be their best race of this season. It might be their worst. As a coach, I don't care. I want them to enjoy the process. And in the middle of the day, there was this couple-hour break where nobody really had anything to do. And so we're at the track, the Armory in New York, and it's jam-packed, and said, let's get out of here. Everybody just go grab some lunch. Let's have a lunch window. So we all went to lunch around the corner, and I've got 11 kids, their parents, like all just kind of jammed into this Mexican-Italian restaurant. It was a little strange, but it was quite good. And they're all having lunch, and they're talking, and like all the kids are getting along. Boys, girls are having a blast. And I started talking to the parents. I'm like, this is why we're here, right? We're here for this. We're here for this part of the experience, not a medal or whatever it is they may or may not get. And at one point, all the boys went back outside because a bunch of them had to go run, and they're standing on the sidewalk. And the parents start taking pictures, and they're cracking up, and the boys are making all these, goofy signs. And then they go to like start walking back to the track, and they can't agree on which direction to go. It's like 2 blocks in New York, 2 blocks. The parents are all concerned. Oh my gosh, are they going to be able? It's New York. I'm like, it's 2 blocks. They'll be fine. You've got air tags on them, whatever. They're okay. And like for like 30 seconds, they're there. They're debating. Do I go this way or that way? By the way, both ways get them there. Okay. And the parents are cracking up. Everybody's laughing. They're taking videos, sending it out to the thread. They finally pick a direction. They get back to the track, and it's all good. And what I told the parents that night at dinner is I reinforced, I said, that's why we're here. I need you all to be patient with your kids. Your kids are exceptional athletes, and they're probably going to do really well in high school if we let them go through these processes, the ups and the downs. But if we expect them to get a medal every time they show up to Nike Indoor Nationals, if we put that pressure on them, rather than letting them develop, enjoy the process, be with their friends, we're going to run them out of the sport before they get an opportunity to be, to realize their potential. And so as I think about the patience and the enjoying the moment, I've tried to apply that more and more to everything else that I do with our kids, because, I realize sometimes I'm that parent in the other context, right? With soccer, sometimes like I'm that parent. I'm like, oh, I gotta, let me take my own advice right now and just dial it back, because you know what? It's going to be okay. It's going to be fine. And applying that to school and everything else. So there's this I hate to say it, balance, right? You showed up to New York, you did all these things, like that shows a little bit of, let's go get it. Let's be a little impatient, but you can't take that too far. If you stop enjoying the process and you put too much pressure on the kids to perform, it completely backfires. So long-winded, but that's the vignette that came to my mind when Lisa was talking.
I love how you're reinforcing what Lisa's talking about being in the moment and being able to enjoy that. The New Jersey, New Yorker in me wanted to know, did you eat Italian or Mexican?
I got Italian. Some of the other kids got Mexican. Everybody enjoyed it. It was an interesting restaurant, I'll tell you, man. But it was good.
I've never heard of that, but
it was good. I'm telling you, it was weird. It was weird.
Awesome. Well, you've just taught me about Nike Indoor Nationals, a phrase I had never heard before. So thank you for that education, Martin. And for your wise words and your time today, Lisa and Martin. This has been a sheer delight to spend this time with you. Thanks for coming on the podcast. We look forward to continuing the conversation, and I'm sure our podcast paths will cross again somewhere. Thank you both.
Sounds
Thank
fabulous.
you
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Lori. Thank you.
Last thing I want to say today is we got ourselves on the YouTube. So if you're not currently subscribed to the Parents at Work podcast over on YouTube, please help us correct our dismal subscriber numbers by just clicking on the subscribe button. My middle schooler in particular is very embarrassed by the small number of subscribers that we have because, his Minecraft YouTube channels are blowing up with all sorts of hundreds of millions. So, I told him we'll never become that. I think we can pass 100 at some point. So anyway,
healthy
For
YouTube.
sure.
We'll go subscribe right away.
awesome.
You have 3 subscriptions from us.
Awesome.
Martin, myself, and Reverie.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank
Awesome.
you for being here. Thanks for subscribing. And we'll be back again with you next time. Bye, all.
Wonderful.